I recently met somebody, his name was David Cohen. I said, oh, so such a Jewish name. He says, actually, the family name was a bit longer. It was Cohenofsky, but my grandfather tried to assimilate and anglicize his name, so he chose Cohen. I guess his grandfather didn't know much about assimilation. In this week's Torah reading, we read about the exile and about the slavery of the Jewish people, and finally Moses comes to try to redeem them. The whole Torah reading is called Shemot, which means names. These are the names of the sons of Israel, the children of Israel who came to the land of Egypt. In fact, the whole section, the whole book of the Torah, the second book, is known as a book of Shemot, which is names. Why is names so significant? Our sages say something fascinating about the Jewish people. The Jewish people were enslaved for 210 years in Egypt. They adapted Egyptian culture. They became idolaters. They adapted many of the customs and way of life of the Egyptians. What kept them as the sons of Israel? What kept their identity? What kept their culture? And our sages say three things. They didn't change their Jewish names, their Hebrew names, Reuben, Shimon. It didn't turn into Bob, Sam. And they didn't change their clothing. They had unique clothing that they brought with them from land of Israel, from Canaan. And they didn't change their language. They kept speaking Hebrew. And that's what kept them as a culture. That's what kept them as a people. And even though they took on idolatry and many other cultural things from the Egyptians, they stayed apart, and they had their own unique identity. And therefore, when it came time to be redeemed, they were identifiable, and Moses came to redeem them, as we're going to read next week in the Torah reading. A very important lesson for us as we go through times of assimilation and difficulties. It's important to have our Jewish name. Now, we're not talking necessarily about our family name, we're talking about our private name. If you have a Jewish name, use it. It calls out the soul. It's something that we use, and it calls forth our Jewish identity. If you don't have a Jewish name for whatever reason, make sure to get one, choose one, and the way it's done is that the name is mentioned at the Torah. Make sure you have your Hebrew name, use it proudly, stay proud as a Jew, and then we'll experience the final redemption with the coming of Moshiach. Shabbat Shalom.